Welcome back to another episode of Win With Nabs, and today we have a very special guest. Today's guest is someone who I've looked up to for quite a while, not just for what he did inside the cage, but for how he's built a legacy beyond it. He's a one championship veteran, former Tiger Muay Thai coach, a stand-up comedian, and host of the Honey Badger Hour podcast. Emilio, the Honey Badger Urrutia. Welcome to Win With Nabs. So, before I jump into the show, we have to talk about, you knew me quite some time before we reconnected. So, let's talk about when I was a lot heavier and we met at Thump Gym. What do you remember about that version of me? And did you ever think I'd be doing something like this?
Man, for sure I knew you'd be doing something like this, bro. I thought you'd be running for president already, man. No, just kidding. No, it was good, man. Good to see you, my brother. Yeah, it's been a long time. So how old were you when we first met? I thought you were a lot older, so I thought you were about 17 then. So you were 14 back then.
So yeah, we were talking about it the other day. I was only 14 when we met, and I was going into 9th grade.
Yeah, I remember. I couldn't believe how much weight you lost when I saw you at the gym the other day, just like about a month ago or so. When I saw you cutting about, I was so surprised, man. But yeah, it was awesome to see you, bro. I remember even back then, you had the eye of the tiger. You were training pretty hard. You were super motivated. So I'm glad that you stuck through your fitness journey and you haven't stopped. You've been boxing, training hard, getting after it, man. So yeah, it's great to see you here, bro.
Thanks so much, brother. Maybe I'll make that presidential run. Might take a couple more years, but I got to get a little older before that happens. So let's take it back to Miami. What was your upbringing like here?
I was pretty good. I grew up around here in this, like in Kendall area in Miami. You know what I'm saying? So went to Sunset High School there with my parents, and then pretty good childhood so far. No complaints. And then I started getting into martial arts when I was about 18, 19 years old.
And was your first discipline Muay Thai?
I started with MMA altogether. So we started like a little bit of jiu-jitsu a few days a week, a couple of days Muay Thai, a couple of days boxing, and then I kind of honed in on wrestling and jiu-jitsu for my first 3 or 4 years before moving to Thailand.
What do you think is your favorite discipline now?
It's so hard. Definitely MMA. I like it all together. But
if you had to pick one, like out of every specific discipline, what do you think is the best or most practical for the average person?
Probably jiu-jitsu. Most practical for the average person is probably jiu-jitsu, because with jiu-jitsu you don't need like too much physical gifts, right? Like pretty much anybody can learn it. With boxing, Muay Thai, everybody can learn it also, but sometimes if you're a lot smaller person, a lot bigger person is always, it's always going to be 50-50 if you try to like punch with them, but with jiu-jitsu, if you know a little bit of jiu-jitsu and the other person doesn't, it can go a long way.
It's also one of the things you're just talking about, how it's one of those things that can go a long way. If even the first time you go into jiu-jitsu gym, I remember I did a little bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu myself. As a white belt, even rolling with people who have been training for 3 months, you get washed. It doesn't matter even necessarily the size sometimes, because even a little bit of experience can trounce strength or physical size. Like, it's a crazy sport to be into as a beginner.
Yeah, exactly. No, when you first come in, it's like, I know it can be very overwhelming for people when they first start in the class, because you feel so lost and there's so many moving parts that come into play. But I always tell people, you got to give it like 90 days. If you show up every day for 90 days, you're pretty much going to see most of the things you're going to see throughout your whole career, But you got to do those whole 90-day stretch every day,
No, definitely. It is one of those things that's just time in the game. Because when you look at so many of these jiu-jitsu grades, it's just like you spend so much time perfecting this craft and getting good at it, because the technicality of even the difference between a brown and a black belt is so big. Right. And like the skill gap is insane.
Oh, for sure. And also just between the brown and the black belt, and like different belts in different gyms. So there's just so many different levels. You can be in one gym somewhere where maybe the level's not that high, and then everybody's like a certain level. And then you go to another gym where everybody could be blue belts, but they're better than some brown belts and black belts and purple belts at other gyms.
What do you think makes the difference between a good and a great jiu-jitsu gym, or just, I guess, a MMA gym in general?
I think the people and the coaches, has to be like a good fine lining, like you want to have that line of great coaches, guys who've been there before with the experience, but then also have that team camaraderie where it's like, where you want to have like a place where, there's a set of rules in place, like one, like where discipline kind of trumps most things. I would say that's like a good, good recipe for a successful gym, like good work ethic of guys, but you want to have like competitors too. And then guys that are also just training every day, that they can kind of like bounce off each other.
Another reason I think I also like jiu-jitsu is kind of what you said about camaraderie. From everything I've heard about anyone who's ever stepped foot into a jiu-jitsu gym, or even my personal experience, the guys are always super nice. Like, everyone there is there to help you, teach you, even the people who are more experienced. Like, if you're rolling with a blue belt, they're not going to just immediately steamroll you, because they know that they're going to win like 10 times out of 10. They're going to beat like the inexperienced white belt. So I feel like it's such a good experience to actually learn the sport Versus I feel like sometimes what can be a problem with some, especially like striking gyms, is you'll get a guy who has a big ego. He's more technically advanced than you, and he's going to go full out and hard spar with you. You know?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Well, that's one thing about jiu-jitsu is like to get to that next level, you know, everybody's got to take their bruise. Everybody's got to take their beating, you know? So I guess something about getting beat up makes you kind of more chill and more like compassionate to the next person, you know? But there's also bullies in jiu-jitsu too.
Oh,
That's not to
100%.
say that doesn't work both ways. I mean, you're going to find that everywhere you go. But yeah, for sure. The camaraderie there is very good. Like there's a good system in place, and most gyms have a good system of like helping out the new person because yeah, a lot of times you go to a gym and if it's like a straight striking gym and then it's just sparring day, you're just gonna go in home with a headache and not knowing what the hell happens. At least in jiu-jitsu, you might get beat up, but you've just been held in mount and you get choked out, you tap real quick and you don't take too much damage, you know? So
I think that's also another advantage for the average person training because there's no CTE risk, you don't get any brain damage. And I mean, at worst, most jiu-jitsu fighters and people who train jiu-jitsu end up getting like a shoulder injury or something like that much further down the road.
Yeah.
But it's nothing crazy like you're getting brain trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Like, man, the limbs, you know, hey, if the gods have you, if you're blessed, you know, that's another thing. You know, the limbs, the shoulders, the knees. But yeah, for sure, you keep your head intact, which is a little bit better also, you know, like for the long haul. But, you know, boxing technique, Muay Thai, I love it all. So it's tough. But jiu-jitsu for the common person, I definitely think is like one of the more important, especially for women. Because some women, no matter how good you get at striking, a guy who's really stronger and bigger than you, there's not much you can do if they grab a hold of you. But if you know how to get around, even escape and just be able to move and run away, you know?
Definitely. So you even just talked about Muay Thai right now. So I was reading a little bit about you, and you spent a lot of time when you were fighting for one in Thailand, fighting at Tiger Muay Thai. So walk us through that. What made you shift from what I think is the greatest city in the world, Miami, to going over to Thailand and learning and training there? Because that must have also been an amazing experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I always recommend to any young up-and-coming fighters, like, to travel is, like, for me, has been the best education, you know? Like, I've learned so much about the world and people and different fighters and different archetypes of fighters just from being able to travel and being in a place like Tiger where you get so many athletes from all around the world training there at once. It's crazy. You know, you can have guys from Russia, from Europe, from Brazil, from South America, from Mongolia, Ukraine. It's wild, you know, and they're all mixing together training, exchanging techniques, you know, so it's a pretty great experience. But the way I found about Thailand is that when I first signed up to the first MMA gym that I joined up to in Miami, all the coaches were out of town. They were doing like a field trip to Thailand.
Really?
So this was like in 2008. So I remember this is even before, I don't know, I think YouTube might have just started. But I've got Facebook just so I can watch because they were doing like kind of old school vlog style videos of like going to the stadiums in Thailand and training in the jungle.
That must have been pretty cool to watch back then.
Yeah, so I'm at the gym, right? I'm only been training about a couple weeks. They're telling me that my coach is like the guest coach. He's like, hey guys, your coach is out of town, but he's coming back soon from Thailand. He's gonna be teaching you techniques straight from Thailand. And they were releasing videos on their Facebook channel. And I remember watching it. And I remember watching that video and seeing these guys in the jungle. So I was always like, man, one day I want to get good enough where I can go over there and train like these guys are doing. So I think the seed was planted like when I first started training. And then I had a friend of mine who was a coach at that gym, and he came back for like 3 months, and he ended up staying there for like a year fighting Muay Thai on the circuit. So he came back and kind of like, you know, put the idea in my head. So I was just like, I just saved my money one day, and I was like, all right, once I get good at jiu-jitsu where I felt like I'm competent level, I'm gonna go and start my Muay Thai and striking journey. You know?
So how long was that striking journey in Thailand?
So I went for a 5-week trip, and my first trip I ended up staying for 3 years.
Wow.
But that's because I got a job teaching jiu-jitsu in Singapore. So I was in Thailand training at Tiger Muay Thai for like 6 weeks. And then I got a job teaching Singapore. I met the coach of the gym in Singapore on the mats at Thailand rolling. He's like, hey, you got pretty good skill level. He invited me to go coach at his gym. So that's how I was able to stay in Asia for so long, because I only had like amateur experience at the time, but I was already pretty high level grappler. So I would work and train in Singapore and live in the gym. And then he would just pay me. And then when I would have a fight or something, I'd go back and fight in Thailand, you know?
So I would imagine, even from what you just said about how you're meeting all these fighters from all across the world, were you able to meet anyone pretty cool through that experience, or fighters who you're still in contact with today that we might know their names?
Oh, man, 100%. So what's crazy about that time is, so I ended up trying out for the Tiger Muay Thai tryouts to get on the fight team. And on that tryout team ended up being like the all-star lineup of people, you know, like I remember training, when I was in the mats in Tiger, like around 2013, 2014, people like weren't in the UFC, like Alex Volkanovski was on the mats every
Oh my
day.
gosh, this already a killer lineup just with one name.
He was 4-1 when I met Alex, you know. Valentina Shevchenko,
Another champion.
Peter Yan.
Dominating bantamweight. Yeah.
One of my close friends that I used to train with a lot because he's close to my weight, Kai Kara France. France. Guys like Bruno Robusto, he just fought for the PFL main event against the Irish lad. So it was a crazy time to be there. Izzy Stylebender, like when he was fighting kickboxing, he used to cut about. That's where I met him at for the first time. So
you were just like, I mean, if you're working with the best of the best, how much do you think that made you yourself level up?
Oh, 100%. Like even now, coming back, living in USA and stuff like this, how much I've learned and all the experience I've gained. Like I know what the highest level guys in the world train and how the training camp operates. So it gives me a lot of confidence too. And then I know where I can like kind of level up and skill and just how much I've learned, you know, from these people. Like being around such great champions, you know, like it's not even the things they say, just in their work ethic and their actions. I've been able to learn so much from people like, especially like Alex and Kai, and those guys were pretty tight with, you know. Oh, Dan Hooker. That's another one that we spent a lot of time with together. Frank Hickman, who's like the wrestling coach. George Hickman, my buddy Shay Walsh. So just like a lot of good guys and champions at that time, you know?
Well, even, you know, they say that phrase, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So I'd imagine that you're having these experiences, and even just by virtue of being around them, not necessarily, I mean, you're training with them, but, you know, everyone's independent, you have your own lives and everything, but just being around them, being friends with them, that must have been also a really cool experience. And I have a question. So this is more of like a fight fan question, right? What are some of these guys like? What's Alex like normally?
Oh, Alex is the most. He's
like a pretty chill guy.
He's the most chill guy. He's hilarious. He's just like he's got that like the hero. He's the caretaker. You know what I'm saying? Like he likes to cook for all the boys. He loves to cook and stuff like this. He's so nice. I remember like all right, the first time we met him, I remember we all the fighters came to do the tryouts, and the tryouts is like 1 week of Hell Week where all these fighters apply for Tiger Muay Thai, and then the 5 guys who get picked, they get free training, free housing, and food. And like clothing, gear, and stuff like this, all taken care of while they're training. And then the gym would help them find fights and stuff like this, you know?
They would do all of that for the fighters?
Yeah. It was only 5 guys, and you do a scholarship. So
and how many were competing for that position?
There was like 50 of us.
Oh my
gosh.
gosh.
Like they bring like, I don't know.
It's pretty competitive.
50 is a lot. I feel like that's a lot of people. But it was a big group, you know, like maybe 25, 30. It was one of the biggest ones of the year. And that year was like, man, we had a bunch of UFC guys that are now in the UFC that were up and comers too, you know, before. But so we did that like little Hell Week, and then I remember all the fighters were staying in different places, and everybody was like, all the guys didn't have motorbikes, and they're all walking from their hotels to the gym. And I remember Alex, this is just like one funny story, like the first instance of meeting him, he sees a couple of the guys, he has his motorbike, you know, and he sees a couple of the guys walking, he's like, oh, you guys are going to the tryouts? They're like, yeah. He's like, oh, jump on my bike. He takes 2 guys on.
No way.
He brings
so
them.
you were getting driven around by Alex Volkanovski.
No, I'm just saying, like, this is how what a nice guy he is. Like, he's seeing people walking that he knew were gonna do, like, they're part of our group class of doing the tryouts. He picks them up, puts them on his bike, he drops them off.
That's so kind.
Then he goes on his bike, he sees 2 more guys, goes back and takes another group of guys and brings them back, you know? So just as in his nature, you know, he's just like a properly good
I think
dude,
that's a
you know?
real champion mindset. You
No,
know,
helping
the other people around you. I think that's what also I think defines a champion, not just the hard work. I think some of that's the personality. So while you were competing for Tiger Muay Thai, you got to compete on the biggest stage in Asia, one championship. What did it feel like to step onto the platform for the first time, and just I guess throughout your career in one?
Oh, that was great. That was one of the more better decisions that I'm proud about making, because I remember I started training a little bit later in life compared to most athletes, especially nowadays. But I remember telling myself, you know what, I'm gonna dedicate myself to fighting 1,000% all in, no matter what, from now until I'm 30 years old. And when I'm 30 years old, I'll reassess where I'm at. And I was like, if it's not working out, if my record's not that good, if I'm not fighting for a big show, I'll just go back home and call it a wraps and maybe like, you know, start coaching or whatever it is. And I remember right when I turned 30, I fought for a title for a show in Singapore when I was coaching over there. And then I was like the main event. And then the show, one championship is based out of Singapore. So they have a lot of fighters and gyms over there. And I remember the owner of ONE FC was watching our main event fight, and it was like a crazy back and forth war. It was like a crazy 5-round fight, absolutely nuts. And then Chachi was the guy who was like giving us the belt, you know. And I remember after the fight, he gave me the belt, and he was like, "Hey man, that was like one of the craziest fights I've ever seen live. Like, congrats." And then like a week later, I got a ONE FC contract. So that's how it happened. Like I fought for him. He was really impressed with the fight, and that's how I was able to get signed to one championship.
And what is the pressure like of fighting on the professional scene versus amateurs? Because I would imagine like there's a lot of pressure. You know, you have so many eyeballs watching you. You're stepping into like the professional cage, all those different things. So what's that like?
Yeah, like you can definitely feel it. Like I remember my first fight. I remember my first one championship fight. I was pretty tense. Like at the first minute, those UFC jitters. I don't know if it's for one championship the same, but everybody's different, I guess. Like some people have great performances, but I remember feeling it like a little bit tight. You know, it's like, yo, let your hands go. Like the first 2 minutes, I remember the guy like kicked me or punched me like 4 or 5 times. Then I finally woke up. And I was like, all right, just go, boom, and I took him down. I got into the fight, but it was great, man. You know, honestly, coming up, I was fighting in so many crazy, small, crappy shows, you know, like in clubs and back alleys and random areas where by the time I got to one championship, I had already had like almost 15 fights, I think, and I was pretty like confident, and I finally broke through that nerves period of my career where now I can enjoy it. I was like, all right, now I'm in the big show. Enjoy the fruits
of your labor.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm in the big show. Like now, let's do this. You know, and that's like kind of like where my honey badger persona kind of came out the most. You know.
So I was gonna ask, where did the name come from? Because you have a pretty cool name. Where did the honey badger come from?
So back in the day, man, he must have been young. This was like maybe 15 years ago. They had that commercial, Honey Badger Don't Give a Damn. It was like a funny commercial of like this guy with like a funny voice narrating about the honey badger. And it was the honey badger getting eaten by like a cobra, you know what I mean? Then he wakes back up and fights, and he was like fighting off lions. It's like the honey badger don't give a shit. And then my fighting style too, like since I was amateur career, like I've always had like a forward, like heavy pressure style, you know, like going forward, very crazy, like make people tired. And then I'm very hairy too, so I really, I was
fit the profile of the honey badger.
Yeah,
that's
like,
a pretty
small, hairy, and ferocious, you know?
That's a pretty sick story, man. So how do you think that competing internationally kept you different than competing in the United States?
Oh, forget about it. I think it's leveled me up like crazy just because all my fights, that's another thing too. When I went to the big show and won championship, a lot of people don't leave their city or state to fight for the first time until they go to like a UFC or Premier Fight or PFL type show, you know? Where I was lucky that fighting in China all these years, like you would just go to China, they would buy you a ticket. You don't know who your opponent is. You don't know what province you're fighting in. I mean, they send you.
That must have been a little bit hard because there's no film. You don't know anything about the fighter. So how do you prepare when you just don't know anything?
Oh, forget about it. You just got to be ready for anything and just know that, hey, you get the fight's a fight and that they're going to throw any kind of crazy situation at you to throw you off your game. That's the whole point. Because in China, back in the day, they were doing like, I could see what they were doing. They were trying to make like China versus the world. So they used to love getting fighters from all over the country, all over the world, and have like China versus Brazil, America. They loved American flags, Brazilian flags. So then they would pay you good money, but then they would kind of like stack the odds against you. So like they'll tell you, hey, you're gonna fight. You say yes, and then you don't get your ticket till like 2 hours before the flight, and you're like, what's going on? You know, and they're like, yo, if you want to fight, take this flight. Boom, and you just go. Or they send you your invitation letter. And then in the invitation letter, they send you like, oh, they'd have to put your hotel, where you're staying, all this. But they'll send your invitation letter for some random place. And then you show up to the country, you show up to China, and then you get in a bus and you drive for 15 hours into some random place. So they kind of make it harder for you. But listen, at the end of the day, it kind of levels you up too, because you kind of be prepared to fight anybody, anyone. And it kind of, when you fight on a big show like ONE FC, when you know who your opponent's going to be, you know who's paying you, it's like, oh, this is easy. You know?
I would also imagine like you have to hustle to get some of those fights as well, because I know that even in America, it's so hard for so many up and coming fighters to break out because there's so much competition. Not even like the level of talent, but there's just a lot of people who are trying to compete now and break into MMA. So I can't even imagine then in the earlier stages of the sport, it must have been so hard to break out in America and different to break out in Asia versus the United States.
Oh, 100%. So I feel like I really got blessed and lucky in my life that I started MMA career when it was pretty early in the sport, but pretty big enough already. And when I moved to Asia, that was like the golden era of MMA.
And Muay Thai especially.
Yeah, Muay Thai, and then it was the golden era of like Chinese MMA. Like I remember my friend, I was cornering my buddy in a show in Mongolia. He fought in the desert in Mongolia, some massive show.
So before we even get to the story, how do you get to a fight pit or an octagon in the middle of the desert in Mongolia?
In the middle of the desert in the wintertime. It was freezing.
What?
Yeah.
That doesn't even make sense.
Crazy. You have no idea. Like, but what was crazy was the main event of that fight card was Zhang Weili when she was like 16.
Oh my gosh. Now she's a champion in the UFC.
She was a champion. But even back then, like when I remember when I was cornering my buddy and we're in the locker room and I see her walk in, she had this aura. She had like 10 people with her, like an entourage of like 10, 15 people. And she looked like Mike Tyson warming up on the pads. And I was like, who is that chick? And now it ended up being like one of the greatest female fighters of all time.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just traveling in Asia. I remember I got a 10-year visa for being from America. So I was like super easy pickings for the Chinese promotions. So they would just fly me out all the time. So that's how I was able to I was able to fight quite often. Like every month I was able to fight MMA, going to China, come back to Thailand. And in China, they pay you USD. So I'll make like 2-3 grand in USD. They give you USD cash and then I go to Thailand. So.
And how much of your time did you spend in China coaching versus fighting? Because you also mentioned you were cornering your boy. I imagine you had a lot of other friends who you were training with in Thailand. So that also probably took some of your time.
Oh, for sure. Like you go like little weekend trips. So like maybe I have my friend Bruno. I remember he was like in a 4-man kickboxing tournament. So we went over to Beijing or Nanjing.
What are those tournaments like? Because I don't think in the U.S. any of those are allowed anymore because there's too much risk for the fighters. But I think they still do some of that in Asia. So what's it like? Have you ever competed in one of those tournaments where you fight multiple times in the same night? Or what's it like for your buddies that did?
Man, I've cornered 2 guys for a 4-man tournament. My student Raul, he did a 4-man tournament in MMA, which is absolutely crazy, for a URCC contract where he did 2 like 3-minute rounds. So. No, 2 5-minute rounds, no elbows. But he fought like 10 hard minutes, comes back to the locker, and then you got to like cool down. And the goal is to cool down, but stay warm. You know, and then in kickboxing, they do it quite often. A lot of these guys will do like 8-man, usually 8-man kickboxing tournaments. And then I cornered my buddy Bruno, where it's pretty tough, man. Like to be able to relax and sit down, like I've never done it personally, but just cornering my friends, that's got to be the hardest thing to do in the world.
I would also imagine, like, depending on how the first fight goes, if you get some calf kicks and imagine you just have like a dead leg and your leg's hammered. I don't really know what you're supposed to do in that situation, you know?
That's the thing about it. Like, you never know the luck of the draw, and you can have a hard fight, and then the guy you're fighting got a knockout in 1 second or 15. Maybe the guy got a first round knockout, and then you had like a crazy war where you got your leg chopped off.
Dude, that would suck. That would be horrible. Imagine like you have a hard fight. You have I guess you said 2 rounds, right? Two hard 5-minute rounds, and the other guy you're going against got like a first round submission win or something like that. If it's MMA, that'd be crazy. That would suck to go against that guy. You know, so I'd imagine that like if you're one of those fighters, the amount of how much cardio do you think you have to be able to do 2 of those fights in a night?
I think first is cardio, but then after cardio, you just need heart and big ass balls, because man, sometimes like you can be in the best shape of your life training so hard, you'd be like, I'm ready. And then you get tired after 5 minutes. Fighting is so weird like that, depending on the fight. But sometimes I think when there's like a certain level, like where both you guys are just completely exhausted and just who can dig deeper and find that craziness inside,
So something that I like to say on the podcast a lot, and one of the things that I believe in is winners lose more than losers do. So what do you think is the toughest fight of your life? It could be in the cage, outside the cage. What do you think it is?
Toughest fight has been myself, I feel like for all of us, right? Like a lot of times we're just battling ourselves. I feel like, at least for me, when I'm fighting, when I'm at my best, it's like, I'm just trying to fight the best version of myself. I don't really care so much for the performance now. I'm like, all right, did I perform better than my last fight, But for my hardest fight, real fight that people have seen, I took a fight once on short notice for one championship. I fought this up-and-comer kid, Lee Kai-Wen, and it was like 1FC's. It was top 5 or something. It was one of the top 5 most exciting fights in 1FC history, and then it was like the fight of the year or something like that for 2017. That was just one of my craziest fights ever. Like first round, he was like a knockout artist, but I thought I could submit him, So I took the fight, and
what's it like to take a fight on short notice, by the way? Because I would imagine, that must be really, really hard, right? Because you're going against a guy who's been fully trained with a full camp and everything prepared. So what's that like?
It can work for you and it can work against you. I feel like the sweet spot is like, honestly, like 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks.
How would that work for you though?
1 week. Oh, this one was on 2 weeks of training and then fight week, so about 2.5 weeks notice.
How do you manage the weight cut?
Well, luckily I was fighting in one championship. And in one championship, they do the weight classes, every weight class above, because they do hydration tests. So for one championship, they do 2 weigh-ins, and then every weight class is bumped up. So luckily for me, in one championship, that fight was at 155, which was featherweight. So for me to make 155 for one championship, I didn't really ever have to cut weight. I could always fight at my natural weight.
Oh, that's pretty solid.
I'll be eating pizza fight week and chilling,
I mean, it's like you see now in the UFC, you have so many of these guys who train their bodies to get those pounds. It's it's really dangerous for your organs and stuff because you're so dehydrated.
Yeah, I hate it. I don't think I coach now, and like some of my young up and coming fighters, I try to get them really never to cut weight. Like I feel like cutting weight before a fight is kind of crazy because you're dehydrating yourself. And I think the more weight you cut, the less power, the less punishment you can take on the brain. I think the big knockouts happen when you take a big weight cut and your brain doesn't fill back up with the fluid. At least from my experience, because I used to fight at bantamweight at 135, and I remember sometimes with a big weight cut, some punches that would never hurt me in real life, I would feel them at bantamweight.
I mean, your body just has less water in it. You're not at your full capacity. And it's so unfortunate now that in like the UFC, to be powerful, to be dominant, you have to go through like a heavy weight cut, pretty much, because everyone else is doing it. You're going to be at a massive size disadvantage if you don't. I feel like there's almost no one who's really fighting at their natural weight class anymore. No,
remember Frankie Edgar back in the day? I'm trying to think who now. I think Islam might be fighting closer to his regular weight class
if he fights at 170, I think so.
But they say he even can make 185. So he probably at 185. I reckon Islam's about 200 pounds, 205, when he fights. I mean, when he's out of camp. So imagine for that to lose 50 pounds per fight camp is a lot.
Let's talk about Boxer. You're now a full-time coach at Boxer. You spend a lot of your time coaching there. So what's the transition like from going from being a fighter to a full-time coach?
Yeah, it's great. I love it a lot. I mean, something that I think came pretty naturally because I've always coached coming up in my career. Also, even when I was like amateur and starting off my career, starting off as a coach. So it's a pretty easy progression, easy transition from fighter to coach for sure. But I love it, I feel like I'm pretty good at it. I love fighting. I know that's going to be always my number one passion. There's nothing like, for me, stepping inside the ring and competing and testing yourself. But the next best feeling is watching your students, maybe even better sometimes, watching your guys that you put your heart and soul into go out there and compete. And for me, the best thing about coaching is being able to watch the transition in people. I get to see young, shy kids grow up to be powerful, strong men. I get to see guys like you. And the transition, that's the best part, looking from the outside in. I get to see it from like a bird's eye view, and it's probably maybe one of the most fulfilling things in the world. I mean, I got no kids or nothing, but coaching, watching guys grow, I've seen really the evolution of people since I've been in this game for a long time now. So I got guys that I've been coaching.
You seem really invested in your guys. I mean, even off camera when we've been talking before, you tell me all these different things about your guys and how dedicated you are to them, how dedicated they are to like training and getting better. It's just some really solid stuff, and I think that there's something that I think every coach can take away from that. And it's like there's almost this element of, you said that you don't have any kids, but it is almost like a parental relationship because you care for them, you teach them, you try to make them better, And I think there's something really powerful. I think that's also what makes you and others really good coaches, I think you should be proud of yourself for that.
Yeah, cheers, man. I appreciate that, bro. No, it's hard because you can't really compete for them. And that's the only catch where I got to be kind of like like you can't do it, that's the problem. It's scary watching your guys compete because you're out of control, like they have to do it. At the end of the day, they got to do it.
They got to execute on what you taught them.
Yeah, or also what they got to do, but that's the only hard part. You're like, you just want to jump in there and do it for them,
So let's talk about some of the things that you're doing now. So do you think your fighter chapter is closed, or are we going to see you in the octagon again?
I thought my fighter chapter was closed, but after watching Alex Volkanovski and UFC Miami, come back and show everybody that you can still do it in the older age. I've been training pretty good recently, so I've been feeling really good. I'm going to be going to Thailand in a couple weeks, so we'll see. I haven't been training with no like professional guys too high level, but I'd like to go see how I fare with the young up-and-coming bucks, And if I can still give these guys a run for their money, maybe I'll have like a couple more fights, just to finish the story. I felt like how my career ended, I was a little bit burned out living overseas. I hadn't seen my family for like about 3 or 4 years.
And how much do you think that played a role? Because I think fighting is, as much as it's physical, it's a very mental game as well. So what's it like being overseas and not being able to see your family? How much do you think that impacted your career?
I think like a lot, to be fair. I think I got a little bit lost in the sauce because traveling to places like Thailand, living over there, it's great, but you got to be very disciplined. You got to be very careful. And you can be there for a long time, and you can kind of get like distracted very easily. So I feel like there's a give and take for everything, but I was there for a little bit longer than I wanted to, and then I wasn't really at the places I wanted to be where I can come home and travel and visit my family. So I think I got a little burnt out on the road, like a little bit of a
homesickness.
Yeah,
almost.
Homesick, but recently, being back home, training with my team here, I felt like really rejuvenated, and I don't know. I feel like the kid is back.
You see, even the way you're talking, you seem so excited. So hopefully we'll get to see the honey badger back into the octagon, into the cage. So
all things are possible.
So the next thing is in this next chapter of your life, you've also been spending a lot of time. We're also talking about it off camera, doing comedy. So number one, where did that come from, right? Because you're a fighter and you've been doing fighting. Fighting's your passion. But where did the comedy come from?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I felt like I was always a comedian. You know, for a long time, felt like I was always a comedian inside, trying to be a fighter. Like that was probably more. If you met people that I went to middle school with and high school with, it probably made more sense that I was going to be a comedian than a fighter. But then I just ended up going the fighting route. But the comedy thing came out, I think, because of through training and just always cracking jokes with my teammates and like kind of like locker room talk. But I feel like some of the best laughs we would have is like when my teammates, we all get together, you're with like a lot of good people. And they would get me really fired up, you know? So I would like go on these funny rants and just have my boys all laughing, especially like overseas. So living in Thailand, like a lot of the Australian guys like Volk and the boys from the New Zealand and the Kiwis and the English boys, they never really seen a Cuban from Miami. So I'd be like in my element, they were just kind of cracking them up all the time. And then so where I kind of sparked the idea. So I started doing the podcast, producing it. And then from there, like making people laugh like this. And then, so it's something I've always wanted to do, but you just don't know. For me, it was like training, right?
It was just a fun thing.
Yeah. But just I didn't know where to start or how you even do it. And then listening to podcasts and stuff, people talk about going to open mics. So I remember when I was in Thailand, and I remember going to Bangkok to go sign up to go do a mic, and then I was like, oh, I'll do it next week. And then the pandemic happened, and everything got shut down.
Nah. So, but then you ended up doing it here and having a bunch of success here. So what's it like? So you've done professional fights in one, but you've also hosted and spoke at your own comedy events. Which one do you think is harder?
It's tough, man. That's a tough call. So like, it's very similar, you know, it's very similar, just so different at the same time, but the pressure's the same, which is good, which I think, right? But some people don't care, I guess. Some people have like, I guess where like ice cold comes in, but I've always had those nerves.
It's natural. They say the number one fear, even more than death, is public speaking.
Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like you have, even for me, like hearing the perspective of like, you've fought like world level talent and you still think that comedy might be as hard as fighting. It's crazy, you know?
Oh, 100%. Because the thing is, when I fight, I know exactly what's going to happen. I'm going to punch this guy and he's going to punch me back. And there's there's a lot of variables, but I pretty much know them all. And the reactions are the same. But in comedy, I could be doing a joke, and then I could say the same joke 5 places in a row. Everybody loves me. And then I go somewhere else one night, I zig where I could have zagged. Maybe I just changed the syllable or the way I say it, and they're just staring at you like dead silence. And when that happens, bro.
That must suck. Have you ever seen?
Yo, the sweat, that's like where the sweat starts to come. It's like you get hot, and then that's how the bombs happen, because it's like once they don't like the first thing, and then and then instead of trying to fix it and you think, oh, I'm going to fix this with a better joke, but then you end up going to your worst jokes and then you blank out. Oh my gosh. And I've been punched in the head a lot. So it's like, when I bomb, it's a big bomb, you know, but when I kill, forget about it. So it's dope. It's like a drug.
Have you ever seen those pranks of those guys who will like pay out all the people sitting in a comedy theater to not laugh at the comedian's jokes?
No way, bro.
That's so messed up.
That's a crazy trick.
To mess with their friends. I've seen that before on the internet. Where because their friend will be the comedian, and they'll pay like everyone in the crowd like somewhere between like $2 to $5 or whatever, like $1 to not laugh at the guy's jokes, and then the guy will be like telling like a pretty funny story. Depends on how funny you think it is, but no one in the crowd will laugh. They'll all just sit at him, look like this.
Yo, that's crazy, bro.
What would you do if that happened to you, man?
You start sweating and you just like. But one of the things that's like a comedian rule, and same thing like fighting, I guess, like you got to do your time. So no matter what, whether it's going good or bad. You got 10 minutes, you wait until they give you the light. You never get off stage until it's your time to get off and they tell you. So you just got to thug it out until you get that light. And when you see that white light wave, you're like, freedom. You're like, all right, I'm going to get out of here. But,
so what's the best joke you have then? Or funniest thing?
The funniest thing? Oh my gosh, funny? Forget about it. So many, man. It's you got to come pay to see my comedy show July 8th. Buy some tickets. No. But you know what, I'll tell you one thing, what's interesting about fighting is that in comedy, fighting in front of your family, for me, I will always fight really good, like in front of my family. When I was fighting amateur in Florida, like I always felt like I had really great performances, but I don't mind fighting in front of my family and friends, but performing in front of people, you know, that's when it's like kind of a lot harder than just performing in front of strangers.
Oh, it's not the same. It's not the same.
So it's such a weird dynamic of the sport, you know?
Because, like, you know, there's people, you know, you don't want to look bad. You don't want to embarrass yourself. Because I feel like fighting is different because win, lose, everyone knows how much work goes into it. But I feel like if you mess up in your public speaking, it's a little bit different because, you know, your family's watching, the world's watching. It is number one fear in the world. So it's there for a reason. So you proudly call yourself Hermano Cubano. What does that identity mean to you?
No, that's just, I think that's a funny nickname that my coach, my old boss in Singapore used to have, you know? He's like a Singaporean guy, so he didn't like really speak too much
He didn't really speak too much Spanish.
Yeah.
So when you think about your legacy as not just a fighter, but also a coach, now a comedian, now host of your own show, The Honey Badger Hour, if you guys want to check it out, it's also on YouTube. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Man, honestly, you know, that's a great question. And, you know, I'm getting a little bit older now. That's what I'm starting to think about. And I want to be able to just impact people and all the people that I meet in the most positive way. You know, if I can leave a good impact on people's lives through coaching, through comedy, through making them smile, and just also like, I'm a pretty average person, meaning not pretty average, but like I have the same skill set of most people. You know, I'm not like sticking out anywhere, but, you know, through showing up and being comfortable, uncomfortable, and doing crazy things and things that freak you out kind of builds your character and makes you better. So I would say just like whatever you want to do that really fires you up, like go ahead and do it, and then don't even think about it. And if I can do it, you can do it. So that's like the thing I would probably say the most, you know, especially for my students, you know, like I have a little things that I tell them, but, you know, just like don't be afraid to go after it and give it your best, you know, and whether you fail or not, it doesn't matter, because failing only makes you better anyways, you know, like that can lead to something else. Like I didn't do half of what I wanted to do in fighting. You know, I considered from what I wanted to accomplish in MMA, I think I failed, but that led me to comedy, where now I could be in a whole nother trajectory of things that if I didn't have the balls to fight and sign up to the gym and train, I would have never learned to have the balls to do that other stuff, you know?
It's a pretty solid way to close out the episode. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Emilio, for coming on the episode. We had a great time today on another episode of Win With Nabs. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below, drop a like, and comment anything that you want. Thank you so much for watching the episode, and thank you, Emilio.
Thank you, my bro.